Welcome to the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast, which exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations. I'm John Frank, fellow entrepreneur and the owner of Third Road Management. And with this podcast, we will connect with a variety of experienced and dynamic individuals to shed some light on both the art and science of entrepreneurship. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors. First, my very own Third Road Management, a company that brings fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized organizations by revolutionizing the CFO suite. We'd also like to thank Two Hound Red, a brewery and restaurant located in Glen Ellen, Illinois, that is focused on creating classic, innovative beer and food. And finally, we'd like to thank NWC Media, which provides inbound marketing technology, project workflow management, and efficiency consulting to organizations of varied sizes, who is also the producer of the Drive-By Entrepreneur podcast. All right, Nate Ernst, welcome to the podcast, man. Great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm very much looking forward to this. Proper disclosure, kind of coming into it. You and I are longtime buddies, going back to our days in Champaign, and I've had an opportunity to see your professional journey, and you've seen mine as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that your expertise and your experience and life experiences that go along with being an entrepreneur are really important. And I always like to start out just prefacing, why I do this podcast. And like the mission statement is that it exists to bring current and compelling content to entrepreneurs and influencers of small to mid-sized organizations, right? So most of the people that have been on the show are entrepreneurs themselves. Mm-hmm. And I just love people's journey that got them to make that leap to be an entrepreneur. But then that's just like the start. And it's like everything that happens subsequent to that. But I feel like those stories are really powerful and interesting, and much more interesting than, a lot of things that people can tune into. So I think that that's important. And then the other thing is that like just shared experiences, kind of war stories and, that people can benefit from. So, I know that you've got quite a bit to share about your journey, and I'm excited to double click.
I appreciate that. I think this is the first time you and I have ever been in a bar without a pile of chicken wings and a cold beer in front of us, but we'll make this work.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's see if we can order up a few chickens. If anybody's around here to do it for us, but that'd be great. All right. So let's talk a little bit. I'm going to give like just a little overview about you. It's going to feel a little canned, but then you could add all the, color to it. But you're currently the principal and founder of Envoi Partners, which is a real estate development firm that targets underutilized and underperforming properties in areas with proven and positive trending demographics. I just took that from the website. And I did love this statement. You enjoy being one of the final pieces of the puzzle that complete a great neighborhood. I think that was, it gave me a good picture of what you're trying to accomplish, is I guess what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But you've also founded Ernst Development Company, and you've worked in different capacities in your career, including architecture and engineering, healthcare, and software, which is the earliest of days. I remember,
very early.
That being part of the story. But I always like to just like start out with open floor. Take me on the journey, take us on the journey, go back as far as you want. Whether it's high school or grade school or college or but kind of like what was the journey that you were on, personally and professionally, that kind of brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, careful. You opening it up to me. We'll talk for a little bit.
That's all right. We got time, buddy.
So I guess it's hard to think about me or my story and before you and I met without thinking about my hometown. Yeah. I grew up in a small town in Southern Illinois that was a lot more popular for basketball and its basketball history than any entrepreneur that came through. Yep. There were fewer people in my hometown than, say, at New Trier or some of the bigger high schools that are in the area.
Yep.
But grew up with a great family, and great family around me and great friends and family, and had a good network of people that supported me and my efforts all the way through. I think something that shaped me along the way, though, was I've always had a desire to work. I mean, I picked blueberries as a kid. Unless you were an octopus, you can't make minimum wage picking blueberries at 60 cents a pound. But it was a way for me to earn some cash and, and put a little dough in my pocket. And detasseled corn, worked in oil fields, just anything to kind of keep me busy. And I've always found that the busier I am, the better off I am, and everybody around me are.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't even know that. I mean, even when you and I got to know each other in college, a lot of people have no idea that in, southeastern Illinois, there's oil and gas industry. I mean, I had no clue, right?
Right.
So, I mean, but yeah,
there's a lot of work around that. And, it's hard work. But it's good work. And I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed the guys that I worked for, the Moore brothers there. And, you got a sense about how people who were working very hard worked for somebody. And those guys that ran that shop, they demanded the most of the people that worked for them, but they also treated them with a tremendous level of respect. And it was kind of a family that worked those tough days together. But when fifth grade, my parents, again, great people, very different. My dad, very conservative, very practical, very much a company man. In fact, was an oil guy, marathon. My mom, an entrepreneur, an interior designer, not a decorator. She's careful when I say it.
I know.
She's a designer, University of Illinois. More of a dreamer, more of a, go out, see life, take a tiger by the tail kind of person. And I have both those people in me, but those are very different people and want different things out of life. And so they parted ways, and they parted ways when I was in fifth grade. And then that first time broke my heart. And then they remarried each other, which is kind of wild. And then they divorced again. And I tell that story, not to air dirty laundry. I mean, anybody who knows me, knows my parents, and they both remarried to wonderful people who've also been part of the story. But, it was at that sophomore year in high school, and all the good things that I'd done, just as, 14, 15-year-old kid, 16, I started to kind of throw away. You reacted poorly to a negative thing that was negative in my life. At least I saw it as negative. But it was the first time to kind of see a real challenging event in your life and turn it into a positive. I wasn't turning it into a positive. I was doing everything but. And a good friend of mine, his dad, pulled into his house and got out of my GMC Jimmy and, probably walking with a little bit of attitude. And Phil grabbed me by the shoulders. He said, look, life's tough. Life's tough. This thing with your parents, it stinks. Right? But if this is the toughest thing that ever happened to you, you've lived a damn charmed life, kid. And it was kind of, so, go get your gym shoes, go get whatever and work it out. Carry on. It's not the worst thing. It's not going to be. You're going to have to learn to eat a shit sandwich every once in a while and power on. I don't know if I can say that, but okay. But keep going. And he's exactly right. It wasn't the toughest thing and it won't be the toughest thing, but you just keep going. And I mean, I think that's probably, when I listen to stories of entrepreneurs, and I love them the same way you do. That's the thing. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Keep paddling.
Keep paddling. Keep rowing. Keep going. Good friend of mine shared a quote from Winston Churchill recently. He said, when you're going through hell, just keep going. That's it. It's simple. But, so that was impactful.
It's interesting how those points in time, that, I don't even know if you ever had that conversation with your friend's father or whatever, but there's those marker memories, that just happen in life. You know what I mean? That you remember, and they're these kind of pivotal moments in time, or moments that you can point back to and say hey, that was a formative experience. You know what I mean? In my life that I remember to this day.
Yeah.
So,
There's probably I don't have enough time left on earth to thank everybody who said something great to me, because it takes great people around you. Like, and I feel very fortunate for that all the time. But
yep.
You're exactly right. Like, you remember those moments when it becomes clear, because at that time leading up to it, everything was messy. Everything was, was foggy.
Yep.
But, kind of got things back on track enough to squeak into U of I, where I met some of the greatest guys a guy could ever run into.
Yourself, company,
included, no doubt about it. And as you know, still very close to all those guys.
Absolutely.
And we all met like from the jump.
Yep.
And then there were a lot of guys around us who were also fantastic guys, fantastic girls. And we all just had a really great time and really great experience, and learned a lot about ourselves and took different paths, different ways. Some spent more time in the library than others. But we all got there. We all got there. And again, lifelong friends. And
I literally look back at like the breadth of authentic relationships that have come out of that experience, and how people to this day are still friends, are still strong advocates for one another. I'm not turning this into an Illinois infomercial here, but like, genuinely, I probably have hundreds, if not 1,000 people that I would call good friends.
That's right. That's right. And I remember distinctly being on campus, being back to that small town. Like, there's a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. I think being a small town, you show up and, somebody asks you where you were from, and then they ask you, where did you go to high school? And I'm like, well, I just told you where I'm from. I mean, that's the same high school. It's like kind of one and the same, right? But you realize, the size of where some people are coming from. But then you start to think, well, how do I compete with all these people?
Yeah.
How do I compete with? Well, the answer is you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. You're a community. You're part of, that group of people at Illinois. You're part of that class. You're part of that crew at CAMS, or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
And you're sharing a life experience together, and you're working together, not against each other. And as soon as you can realize that together, the people that you want in the foxhole with you, and not look for a bunch of enemies. The whole, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, I think is garbage. Keep your friends close and hug them and love them and tell them you love them, and go on. So, but those guys that I met, they have been obviously instrumental, and a great support system. But then one of those guys' dads, I met. And he was, a great family man. He was a great father. He was a great husband, and he had a hell of a lot of fun. And he was fun to be around. And he had a few brothers that were also fun to be around. And, while Phil in high school, gave me that advice about, this isn't going to be your worst day. That guy I'm talking about, his dad, his one advice and his mantra was, don't be a jagoff. And, there's
that a few times.
Don't be, everything I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten. And you learn the difference in right and wrong and how to be a good friend. But then thereafter, and when I met him, then all you need to know is use it and don't be a jagoff. And, be good to your people. Be good to your people. Show up when you need to show up. And
there's the power of relationship is incredible. And like I said, without getting all soapboxy infomercially, like I have been wildly supported by that community of people. And like you said, you put out good to the world, and the world gives right back to you, and, it's great. And then we're there on campus, right? Having a good time. But your first leg of your career journey was like, tell me about post-college. Where did things start, and then how did it evolve?
Thanks. So my first job was at Pulte Homes.
Okay.
And, like those guys that I met in college, I wanted to be a real estate guy.
Yep.
I wanted to tromp through the job sites in my loafers and, storm around and get this in the right place and that in the right place and sell a bunch of houses and do that. And I went to work for Pulte. And I learned an important lesson. I wasn't there very long.
Yep.
It was a lot to ask for a 22-year-old kid to drive from Lakeview, where all my friends were down in the city, out to Algonquin.
Yep.
And sit in a model home. And there were some things about it I didn't care for. And thankfully, I had the nerve to change direction soon in there. But I learned an important thing at Pulte. It was about selling. It's more also about myself and the authentic nature of business, of not being someone you're not. But there was a spec home that was sitting in the development and that had been sitting there for a while. I didn't know that. But a family came in soon after I'd gotten the green light to get out of training and into actually selling homes. Family walked in. I looked at our inventory. They told me what they were looking for. I listened because I was excited. I listened, important, obviously. But they told me about a home that kind of matched this old spec home that had been sitting there. It was a Winchester model. And I walked in with them. It had 2 staircases going up to the top floor, up to the 4 bedrooms are on the top floor. And I was so excited to see those 2 staircases going up. This is great. Look at this, and that family latched on to that excitement and signed a contract that day for that Winchester that had been sitting. And then it went into the sales meeting. It's like, how'd you do it, Nate? What was the excitement? Yeah. It was the excitement. And even in a deal that I do today, if I don't believe in that deal, 100%, my head, my heart, my butt, everything. You can make a spreadsheet, do whatever, but you've got to believe in that completely, to ask your capital to come along with you, to commit the next year and a half of your life, 2 years. You have to believe in it. And I believed in that Winchester, and the excitement carried through. So I don't spend any time on anything I don't believe 100% in.
1,000%.
I just said when I came in, I can be a squirrel chaser, and like that, you got to be careful to not chase the next shiny nickel, but you gotta be important.
So important. I mean, I think that's important for somebody that is maybe an aspiring entrepreneur, because the second somebody opens their mouth and says, hey, I think I got this idea about this entrepreneur, I'm already pushing them out the door and being like, yes, you should go do it. That kind of thing. But it seems like the times when somebody brings me an idea and I'll know right out of the gates if it's not going to work, because they're kind of they're into it for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. They're like, I hate my job. I want to go do something different. Yeah. I found this franchise for sale. I'm going to, sling cheeseburgers or whatever it is. And I'm like, this is not going to work. Yeah. Right. You have to be emotionally invested in it and have a position of belief.
I can't live without this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. And that's selling, but that's also entrepreneurship in general. You've got to be 100% into what you're doing.
Well, it takes that. Yeah. And I've equated it too many times to, if you've been fortunate enough like you have to marry the love of your life. Yeah. Right. When you're on the dance floor and all your friends and family are saying, you got to work at it. You can't go to bed mad. You can't do that. I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? I'm in love with this girl. You see her? She's gorgeous. She's fun. She's everything. But, anybody who's spent more than a year and a half in marriage understands you got to work at it. And then there are some bumpy roads. And I have the perfect mate in my life. And but the business, on the other hand, isn't as much fun as your wife or mine, and or can be but you got to work at it. Yeah. You got to work at it, and you got to pour as much love and enthusiasm into it as that. So
100%. Yeah. And then, so you're at Pulte, and then I know you had, before getting into real estate development, you had some experiences, I think, in software, healthcare, architecture and engineering, I want to say, all kind of formative experiences. Right. In terms of shaping and forming and all that kind of stuff. But was there anything you gleaned from those years that like, when it came time to flip the switch on the real estate development side, like you feel like, you learned as part of that process? Or
Well, it's I had bounced around a little bit, like looking for the career, looking for something that was going to make me happy, like feel like, excited to tell somebody about when you're introduced to somebody. What do you do for a living?
Yep.
I think the software, was a great time to sell software.
Yeah.
Was able to make some money. It was a kind of a higher pressure situation. You get the job done or you don't.
Yep.
But the real estate thing for me was still very real,
Yep.
even though I hadn't spent a ton of time at Pulte, and went to work for one of the best guys I've ever met in my life, in a real estate consulting type role where we were putting private pay physician groups together with outpatient facilities.
Yep.
And he was in kind of version 3.0 of his entrepreneurial journey, where he had done really well in versions 1 and 2, and then we're going off on this next iteration. And healthcare real estate was really exploding. It was a great place, great time to do healthcare real estate. And then I went to work for a guy who was kind of the opposite of that first entrepreneurial real estate experience. He was doing a lot of deals, but he was not a guy that you wanted to, model your personal behavior over.
Yeah.
And like my college buddy's dad, who was all of those things. And I wanted to be all those things. I wanted to hit all of those high points of family and friends and business. And you can do all those things together. You can do all of them well. Some things, sometimes your personal life lags because you're working more.
Yep.
And vice versa. And you got to keep all those balls in the air. But, then came along, the financial crisis.
Yep.
2008, 9, you mentioned, architecture and engineering. I was fortunate enough to have a job through that time. I was let go by the last developer that I worked for and went to work at a company called Epstein, architecture, engineering, construction. They'd been in business for 100 years. They hired me to do some business development work. Nobody was buying any A&E services. The world had stopped.
Yep.
And all the guys that I looked up to, all the guys who were doing real estate development, banks, everything, frozen, done. Guys head in their hands, like crushed.
Yep.
And I got so sick of seeing it that I started looking at other opportunities. So what am I going to do here? I mean, I'd just been married to, again, the love of my life. I'm like, how can I make a living? How can I do anything good here? And again, that desire to do something never faded. Yep. But I just needed to find out what it was.
Yep. Yeah. And so the first iteration, Ernst Development Partners.
Right.
That's when you first launched into entrepreneurship. And we were talking about those pivotal moments, similar to one of your friend from high school, with his father. I literally remember you telling the story about you having a conversation with your new father-in-law about, I'm going to go into business for myself. I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and I'm not going to spoil the story because I'm going to let you tell it. But I've told that story 25 times to people that came to me and they were like, hey, I got an idea for a business. And I'm like, let me tell you a story about my buddy Nate. And then I'm like, and it's absolutely true because it's happened to me and it's happened to every entrepreneur I know. But anyway, I don't know if you want to, share a little bit about that. But
well, you got a great memory. I appreciate you bringing that one up because my father-in-law is Hall of Fame entrepreneur.
Yep.
Try and be an entrepreneur, period.
Yep.
Try and be an entrepreneur in a different country.
Yep.
In your second language. I don't have the first clue how he got done what he got done.
Yep.
And the lessons are endless with him. But he's always had a real, subtle way of saying things. He doesn't say a ton.
Yeah.
I've said more in this 30 minutes, then he'll say in a long time, but when he says something, you listen. But the point, he said to me, he said, I like your idea.
Yeah.
Which to me was like totally inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Validating. Yeah.
Validating. I like your idea, but you need to know going on your own, you're going to put your head in your hands far sooner than you think and think, what in the hell have I done?
Yeah. Totally.
No doubt. Like, no doubt. I mean, I think I sent you that, Insta post of like the guy saying, 2025, here we go, as like a skier. And he jumps off, this is my ear, and then he starts tumbling down. It's like, it'll hit you. Yeah. Right? Everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the nose kind of thing. And that is an absolute fact.
Yep.
We bought our first property, May 14th, 2010. That's only a couple months after my daughter was born.
Yep.
Young family.
Yeah.
A little bit of money under management. In fact, I said, let's go out and let's put $300,000 together. And, great attorney sitting at the other side of the table who was going to write the PPM and sub book and all. He goes, well, how about 500? And it was like, I'm like, why? Well, that's a little bigger. It's a little more round. It's like at least go like $1 million or something. Yeah. And so we went out, a little bit of money under management, and bought a house and fixed it up and did it 3 more times. And then we tried to turn over our capital and ran into a first major roadblock, but we got over it. Yep. Like everything, you keep grinding.
Yeah. So, and over the course of time, I mean, we're going back to those probably 08 or 09.
10.
Right? 2010. Okay.
Yeah.
So 2010, now we are 15 years later, essentially. Mm-hmm. And over the course of time, I've seen, your business, obviously Ernst Development, was the first iteration. Now you're Envoi Partners. But, tell me about the evolution of what you started doing versus what you're doing now and what your focus is now.
Yeah. So we started 2010. We were buying on the south side of Chicago. Mm-hmm. Heavy distress.
Yep.
And
I went there with you.
I mean, it was board up after board up after board up after board up. And it was like, you got to take your pick of board ups. Yep. And so like what exactly our buying strategy was nothing structurally challenged. Yep. And tried to underwrite the best we could to the construction, pricing and return and find good areas, good pockets, that the south side's block by block, what have you. So we tried to learn the neighborhoods, and we did. We talked to people a lot, spent a lot of time with police, spent a lot of time with block clubs, spent a lot of time just getting to know the place. But also spent a lot of time with our tenants and saying that, we're going to be here. We're going to be here in the building. We're going to be managing it, and it's going to be dependable. If you've got an issue, we'll fix it. But you got to do your end too. And that's just a relationship. That's a tenant landlord relationship. So we started doing that. We built up a nice portfolio and sold it in 2018. And then weren't sure what was next. We knew pricing had skyrocketed over the 8 years that we'd been down there. We found a nice opportunity to buy another distressed portfolio. Bought it from the DOJ. It was a wild story, and we'll get into the details of it. But we were down there, and what I've always done well is had my ear low to the ground. I'm never the first one in the buyer's pool. We're never the guys when an offering memorandum comes out and there are 3 days of tours that we're going to be one and then come in and be the highest bidder. It's just not our game.
Not an auction game.
Not an auction game. Right. So the opportunity came up. We bought another portfolio about the size that we had just sold off. Took it down in one swing, cleaned it up, sold it. Again, good timing with COVID because we ran head into COVID. But we had the few assets that we had when COVID hit and hit hard, were already stabilized.
Yep.
They were good. And we stayed with our tenants.
Yep.
And we communicated.
Yep.
And like any good relationship, that's the key.
Yep.
Yeah.
It gets back to that same tenant we talked to before, but like I always, even in those earliest years, you were sort of describing your thesis of like what that relationship looks like with the tenant. And you were always just like, look, we're going to treat them like nobody's ever treated them before. You know, we're going to give them an allowance for, you know, flowers and, you know, decorating the place. We're going to bring, you know, meals and, you know, they're going to take good care of the property. We're going to take good care of them. It's going to be a symbiotic relationship. You know what I mean? And it's the same premise that we talked about with our, you know, college friends is, you know, you know, be good to people and they'll be good back, you know, for the most part.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah. So many misnomers about management in that part of town, but we did it. We had a good brand, good relationships,
Yep.
and you know, and then you know, guys buy it, and you get a lot of phone calls about why'd you do that? Why'd you sell? You know, but it's part of the business.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, like, you know, we're not married to anything. We are, you know, unapologetically for profit, and we do that.
Yep.
And then, you know, then, so that's 2020-ish, 2021. And we're skiing with a good buddy. It's later in the evening, probably a little overserved.
Yeah.
But having a good business conversation, you know, what's this? What are we doing here, there? And we just gotten under contract, North and Damon, corner in North and Damon.
Yep.
The old tavern and cafe Absinthe.
Yes.
And he says to me, he's like, look, he goes, you know, the pricing where you used to operate doesn't produce a yield. You can't scale. You can't do those things. Like, you know, COVID also pushed a lot of people away from Chicago.
Yep.
For a number of different reasons. And that's something, you know, we're talking about an infomercial on U of I. I'm an infomercial for Chicago.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people left. And you want to talk poorly about the greatest city in the country, and you want to leave? I've got a bus ticket for you.
Yeah.
Go on. Because the city of Chicago is absolutely the best place in the country.
Yeah.
It is, you know, you take one walk up and down the lake on a Sunday morning and tell me different.
Yeah.
Besides the Cubs, you know, or Cardinal, besides the Cubs, but no. Anyway, I've even grown to love those guys. You know, one lesson I've learned is check your ego at the door. Yeah. If I would have kept that ego about the Chicago Cubs all the years that I've lived in Chicago, I would have missed a lot of great times at Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. But, you know, he says to me, he's like, he goes, look, you know, if you can't buy on the South Side anymore and create that same kind of opportunity, a lot of people are leaving Chicago. That's probably why the corner in North and Damon like comes up and available to a guy who doesn't have the track record doing it.
Yep.
So 2.0, it's going to be hard, but you got this. 2.0, go.
Yep.
And we did.
Yep.
And soon after that,
I mean, I lived right there. You know,
it's an unbelievable location. And it was vacant for 5 years.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
5 years. 5 years. The only income on that place for 5 years were the 3 cell towers that it had at the time. Mm. And throughout the course of our diligence and all, they actually lost one of the cell tower leases. It was Sprint. Sprint, T-Mobile.
Yeah.
So you just need one.
Yeah.
And we went in and tore that place apart. And that's a classic example, just like our first home. And in all of that distress, opportunities sometimes dressed in overalls and appears to be work.
Yeah.
It was hard. Adaptive reuse of 100-plus-year-old building with floor systems that had been taken out and having to put those back in. But we took it on and we did it and it worked.
Now, what was the prior use versus what you turned it into?
The prior use was Cafe Absinthe, which was a great restaurant and had a big following, and Tavern, which is a bar. And then above that was a club that kind of kicked up the volume after Tavern started to slow down. Tavern was a late night place anyway, so it was kind of what was going on. Late night. Yeah, right. That's right. In fact, the cell tower guys who would go in there and service those cell towers would come in early in the morning, and they had some good stories.
I'm sure.
So it was pretty eye-opening. But the operation that we put in there after far more boring, but better credit.
Yeah.
So
so how did you repurpose it? You said you had to do a bunch of interior work, exterior work,
right.
but like, how did you? I mean, I'm trying to picture a club and a bar and a restaurant being converted into this other thing. It's awesome what you guys did.
Well, I appreciate. So what we did was we went to the community group and we said we want first floor retail and we want 12 apartments up top.
Yep.
Well, we got kind of knocked down to 9 apartments above and first floor retail. And the first iteration of going to the community group, they're like, "Oh, great. You want to do something here, but you haven't touched the building in the way that we want to see it. We've only figured out the inside." Because figuring out the inside was complex.
Yes.
And so they asked for historical restoration, and I went back to our architect who said, "Nate, are you ready for that?" And I'm like, "They're right.
Yeah,
they're right. It's their prime corner.
Yep.
It should be restored in that way." And so we went back to historical pictures and looked at it, and it really has, created a real fire in me to look at buildings from a historical perspective and do what we can to restore them to that way, because so much architectural feature has been stripped off because of maintenance needs. But now technology and building materials have moved in a direction where you can recreate some of that look and feel without the original material and it be aesthetically very pleasing. So we put a turret on the front of the building. Chicago loves its turrets. There's a tour in the city that takes you around, all the turrets on Armitage and different locations. So we restored that. Put Chase Bank in the ground floor. 9 apartments up to awesome. That was an exciting day when we realized they wanted to be there. But we went under contract on that building without knowing who our retail user was going to be. And they're half the deal. So there was real risk on it.
It was vacant for 5 years.
And it wasn't. But there, and just this is office downtown right now, and if there is a stable landlord, a stable owner with a good reputation that you can transact with, there are deals to be done. It's the distress, it's the uncertainty. When properties are upside down on the capital stack, it's no one wants to sign up with that. And ride that road.
So that's one of your marquee properties, or projects, under Envoi.
Correct.
But more broadly speaking, with Envoi, I know I gave the little elevator speech. What, in your own words, how do you describe what Envoi is trying to do to people?
We, I think the easiest way to put Envoi is we typically take on the project that you've walked by 10 times and wondered, or 100 times and wonder, why is that building like that? We're doing a project on North Avenue, close to the one I mentioned. That's also, been vacant for quite some time. It was a gym, and the first floor is 6 feet above grade. Well, that doesn't give a retail user a lot of options. If you walk in and you're met with 8 stairs. So current owner, for whatever reason, whether they can't or they won't, develop that or redevelop that, fix the issue. It was a gym, a 4-story gym. We're going to make it a 3-story retail plus resi. So repurpose the asset for today's use. And we're seeing a lot of opportunity in that space because people, what coming out of 2020 are now wanting is to live and work in the same place or in the same general area, right? So the ideal mixed use community is what people are looking for. And we think we have that Southport corridor. We have that in Bucktown. We have that. The best example is the juggernaut of the West Loop in Fulton Market. It is office. It is high-end retail. It is pop, pop, pop,
Google,
like constant, constant.
Yep.
And I think that that's what we have the opportunity in the city, in Chicago, is to do in the Loop.
Yep.
Is to take an area that's highly focused in office and add a mixed use component to it. Add real resi, great amenity, add retail, restaurants, shopping environment that is there in some respects.
Yep.
But then you add the theater district, you add some of the things. I mean, our city's built around that loop.
Yep.
Transportation to and from. We're buyers there.
Yeah.
We're buyers.
Well, that was one of my questions in general was like, what are some of the greatest opportunities? But like that's the elephant in the room, right? Is, occupancy rates are very high from an office perspective, right? You've got these skyscrapers, right? Or at least at a minimum, let's call them tall buildings, right? Mm-hmm. That everybody's like, okay, how does this play out? 20 years from now, 30 years from now, what does that downtown loop look like? Mm-hmm. And then it begs the questions about infrastructure and grocery stores and, just all the things that people need to live.
Right.
But like, I'm curious, like obviously you see it moving in that direction. This property that you're, currently looking at, how are you developing that? And then how do you see it playing out overall?
Well, I think we touched on it briefly is, passion, excitement. And the city has a PR problem. Yep. Okay. One of the great entrepreneurs I've run in, and a guy who's impacted my life and my business in a massive way. I was introduced to him. I'm going to go off topic just a little, by my college roommate. And he said, "Hey, meet with this guy. You guys are doing some exciting stuff in the city. He just moved back to Chicago, doing cool stuff. You should meet." We meet at Starbucks. We don't talk about anything personally. That time in my life, it would have been like, hey, let's meet for a drink at, dinner, something like that, mutual interest, and kind of see where it goes. This was Starbucks. Yep. At like, 8:00, and which is just unique in itself. Like a lot about that is unique. Yeah. Well, he and I sit down, and there is a ton of energy. Same energy that you would find at dinner, but an energy about what do you do? How do you do it? What's the opportunity? Yep. And bang, 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 bang. And it was 30 minutes and then done. Great to meet you. Hey, we'll catch up and we'll see you again. And then follow up. He's like, hey, come back. I want to invest in what you're doing. If there's an opportunity, come back. And like, well, this isn't really how like a new relationship that like 26, 27, typically interact. But so it was new to me, but I was kind of following along, and I show up at his shop, and there's a big showroom, people buying a lot of clothes, and he's charging across the showroom, and he was like, white pants, white jeans. Everybody in this town, every man should have a pair of white jeans. And I'm thinking to myself, I kind of always like to be well dressed, I don't have white jeans. Yeah. I don't have white pants. Like, maybe I should have white pants. Yeah. It's back to that passion thing. Yep. Absolutely back to, and I think that guy and that sales methodology, you have to believe in 100% of what you're doing to get big things done. Yep. Right? You have to have that behind you. He had that, and everybody that I know has, white jeans. Yeah. It's like, it's just kind of part of your wardrobe. Yeah. Well, his, that kind of push is, I saw how you grow a company and how you scale a company and how you take on big things. Yeah. It's not bluster, but it's selling white jeans to one person at a time and getting the word out. We're buying one building in the Loop, and we've already bought one building in the Loop. Yep. 212,000 feet, 16 floors. It's a gorgeous, it's architecturally a work of art. Beautiful. Beautiful building. Yeah. And we're looking to buy more. Yeah. And we're also working with the city and with officials to work on the narrative that is Chicago. Because as I mentioned before, I believe it's the greatest city in the country. And there was a time when I struggled with it. I fell out of love with the city, and I talked to some guys I know, and one of those guys said, Nate, It's the show. We are the show in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And we're the show in the country. If you really, cost of living,
Yep.
talent.
Yep.
There's so many great things that the Midwest is. And by the way, Midwest nice.
Yeah.
Be proud of it, because we're good people, and we treat newcomers nice. You can come in and do business.
And it's a beach town.
It's a beach town, third coast.
A lot of people don't know that. It's a beach town.
It is a fun place. I missed that when I was younger, but now with the kids, it's kind of got used to that. It's a gorgeous place to hang out. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So that's the opportunity that we see now, and that mixed use in the core neighborhoods, where you can bring a residential experience, a great residential experience above the places where people want to work and play and and do that. That's what we see.
Is there a I would imagine downtown there would be like sort of a master planning committee or something like that. That's like spending all their best hours of the day thinking about how do we do this, and courting people like yourself to and your investors about hey, here's the ideas that we're thinking about, and getting you guys excited about the ideas too. Is does that exist? I don't even know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There are really great people at the planning department who are, working on programs like LaSalle Street Reimagined and now State Street Reimagined. There's a lot of reimagining that needs to happen. Even changing building code to accommodate old buildings that, and bringing building code forward to be IBC type standards. So, it gets out of some of the stuff that's a little more archaic in the building code, so that we can build this product and make it affordable. I mean, there's one way to make housing affordable. Add supply. And take off regulation on the materials that go in there to have great materials that function and work. But those decisions and that kind of stuff is above my pay grade. We respond when we're called on. But yes, right now the city's hyper focused on loop and transformation. And when we call and ask about something that we need or want, they're responsive and they can do more, and they are doing more. So there's great focus on it. I'm pleased with the response, and I think others that are investing alongside us. There are 1,400 apartments coming online on LaSalle Street. We're another 200 of those, and it's exciting to see. It's going to be a very different place in a couple of years. Including, you mentioned Google earlier. Google headquarters at the old Thompson Center. What Clark Construction's doing there is outrageous.
I love it. So just a couple of I'm just thinking about themes, just value investing in real estate in general, right? That's kind of my simplistic way of thinking about what you're doing, right? Is there a secret sauce in your opinion, without giving up anything proprietary, right? You know what I mean? But I spent a lot of time in distressed investing, more on the security side, right? And I knew, if I was picking up the phone to call a hedge fund in 2009, that I might as well not pick up the phone unless I was talking about something that was going to yield 30% plus, something like that, but what do you think are some of the keys to value investing? You talked about, for example, walking past a project enough times before you were like, hey, why isn't somebody doing that? That's a pretty good sign, If everybody's doing it, right? Then it's not interesting, right? But are there any other key considerations that you feel are really important?
Well, you can bring that, you walk by it and say, why is it like that? And so many people say, well, why is it like that? And I go, there must be something wrong with it, and just keep walking. We walk by it and say, we know 15 people have passed on this. Let's figure this thing out. So is there a secret sauce? I think the ability to recognize when there is a great asset that's underappreciated, underutilized, is some of it, but that comes with a lot of time.
Yep.
And you got to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince, I should say princess.
Yeah.
But aside from that, though, it's just like any other form of entrepreneurship or any other form of business or any other form of investing.
Yep.
It's some creativity, but it's persistence, and discipline.
Yep.
That, without coming across as a brash jerk, like, we have to do a do on our terms.
Yep.
This
you
deal,
can't go chasing everything, right?
Can't go chasing everything.
Yep.
And you can't let, doing a deal, the desire to do a deal, your ego say, I want to do this deal, get in the way of doing a good deal.
Yep.
You have to do it. If you're going to build a building, if you're going to build a business, foundationally, it has to be strong.
Yep.
And we make money when we buy.
Yep.
That's the one thing you can't adjust. You can adjust your construction.
Yep.
You can adjust, but that purchase price is locked.
Yep.
And if you've overdone it, you're toast from the beginning. You're working for free for a long time.
Yep.
So
in my days of sort of distressed bond investing and subprime and CDOs and all that kind of stuff, the phrase was, there was no such thing as bad bonds. There was only bad prices. and that was the idea, because, like, to your point, like, flipping it around and me thinking through your situation, like, even if you could buy that building on LaSalle Street, let's say, for example, at what you think is a favorable price, well, then the other externalities start coming into play about, but if I got to bring this thing up to 2025 codes and everything, like, I'm just going to this thing's going to get priced out. You know what I mean? And that's where, like, those conversations with the city, you got to be like, hey, if we want to do this, we got to figure out a way to do it where we can do this in an economically feasible way.
Right.
Otherwise, it doesn't make sense,
Right.
But solving those problems and the willingness to lean in and be like, I want to do this, like, let's figure it out, as opposed to, it sounds like too much work. Let's just move on to the next flower.
Right.
But like, that's how you do what you do. And, I feel like that's, like, the best professional investors in, the world, that's what they do too. They go and look at the stuff that nobody else wants to look at. And they say, how do we figure out a way to make this work?
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a very calming feeling when you realize you can just figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, then you'll figure that out. Like, it's,
right. Are there, like, are you doing, like, one project at a time, or are you actively still looking? Like, how does that work?
Now we have 4 projects in design right now. 3 of which we should get permits on this week.
Okay.
So we're very contrarian in that form. There aren't a lot of apartments that are coming online in 2025, 2026. Again, back to the supply, demand, and cost of housing. We can do better if we allow supply to come on. More like that. It doesn't protect my investment as much as I'd like, but I think the rising tide
lifts all boats.
Lifts all boats. And so, like, allow more development to come in and build up. More people come in, more businesses come in. I think it's the right approach to the strain on housing and housing prices right now. I don't think we're ever going to get in a situation like they see in the Sun Belt, where it's overbuilt and there was just so much, because we're land constrained in the city. Right? There's only so much that can be done there, and there is still very much a process. But no, we're very excited to be under construction on a number of projects right now, and a couple big ones, as I've mentioned, under design that will come on, like River North. About 50 apartments, and Loop, about 200 apartments, and then some other neighborhood stuff that should be permitted soon. Combination, about 60, 70 apartments.
And now, how do you do that? Do you have dedicated fund that you have investors in, or do you go project by project, or how does that work?
This is always an internal discussion of, of what the best, what the best approach is here. Currently we raise capital project by project.
Yep.
And when I think back about my view of the business going in and where we are now, deals are the hardest part.
Yeah.
If you have a good deal, capital will be there.
Yeah.
We have great people around us in capital, and it's a great relationship when you make someone money.
Yeah.
Like they typically stick around.
Yeah.
And the fund is certainly in this environment with distress being high on everyone's mind is certainly something that we are evaluating internally as an approach to capitalize on the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
But to date, we've really just raised opportunistically as deals come up. We never want to have a feeling that we need to put money out. Like, again, back to that commitment, back to that passion, back to that understanding every deal to be tied to an arbitrary timeline.
Yep.
We do deals on our terms, and we'll stick with that.
Yeah.
Regardless of,
I'd say there's such because you want the ability to act quickly.
Right.
And you want your offer to have weight to it.
Right.
So your offer with uncommitted capital or committed capital, like it's a hokey pokey, but I don't disagree. I mean, I don't know that there's a pure right or wrong answer there. You know what I mean? I think it's just, if you've got a group of dedicated investors that are ready to strike when you're ready to strike, then that seems like ideal world.
Right. And, it's our offers are always backed by the fact that we have the ability to pull our capital together.
Yeah.
Like it is a phone call. It is, it is a couple meetings and we're there.
Yeah.
But it is, right. To be able to just go straight at it. It does, but you have to operate.
Yeah.
The same. Yeah.
So in just skipping over to city of Chicago again here, obviously loop redevelopment is a huge thing out there.
Yeah.
Are there other opportunities in the city of Chicago or like, the biggest areas of opportunity? Like I think of like Soldier Field and all the noise. Are they going to move to the suburbs? Or are they not going to move to the suburbs?
You're a better person to answer that question than I am.
Yeah. Well, I want them in the suburbs.
Yeah.
That's just me being selfish and being tired of walking 5 miles to, after the end of every game and, 30,000 my closest friends. But yeah, I mean, I got to think that that's a huge one that's on people's mind right now. What does that look like? What happens around it? I know the White Sox are, have loosely talked about doing a new stadium kind of thing. But are there things like that out there that like, you're in it? I'm just talking smack as somebody that reads the paper every now and again.
Yeah.
What do you see out there in terms of other stuff that people in your industry are talking about?
From the development standpoint,
Just development, real estate stuff, where money's moving in, that kind of thing. Outside the loop, I think transformation's happening in commercial corridors. Yeah.
There is an Alder in Edgewater, Uptown, Lanny Hoppenworth.
Okay.
And she's proposed a 2.6 mile stretch of Broadway, like in that Uptown area, to increase the density. And that's a bold proposal.
Yeah.
And one that I think just full-throated support.
Yeah.
Like those areas of our city, that's where density needs to exist. Yeah. And that's where people want to live.
Yeah.
Like
close to the water.
Yeah, give it to them. and build high, again, and relieve some of the pressure on housing prices. I think that's a great opportunity. I'd like to see more of that. There are certainly great older people in our city that support development. But I think that's a really positive one. By the way, we went through a zoning change in her ward, and she has a diversity and inclusivity board that brings shareholders of all over the community together to help advise on what is a massive power in the aldermanic prerogative. And so she gets community support in the decisions that she makes as an older person. It's really encouraging.
That's wise, right?
It's wise. And it took us, in our process with her, took us longer to get through than we wanted to, but everything in my world takes longer than I wanted to. I go back to that patience, and I have to remind myself of the patience all the time. And I, if I really have a blank slate, the ability to make our property taxes more predictable is a massive opportunity for development to lend itself to more development. If I'm an institutional buyer or an institutional investor, and the biggest line item on my P&L is subject to move in a big way, I'm not going to do that deal.
Nobody wants to step on the grenade.
No one. And so, when institutional capital is, being probably the least expensive capital of all, like lower hurdle rates, like you want that capital to come in, brings prices up, brings development up, brings more supply into the market because people know where they can exit. Like a guy like me I can say a life company is going to come in, and this is where they'll trade. And it'll be mutually beneficial to those parties. It'll also be beneficial to the people that live in the city that have their housing come down, and it's well run, well backed. Like you don't have a bunch of distress.
Stability and certainty go a long way to, I think, just economic development, right? Because the people that are willing to invest, right, and have the resources to do it, will generally only do it if they could eliminate not all the variables, but certain variables, right?
Certain variables.
And they're never going to solve for all of them. And that's why you find opportunities to invest in properties that you do. But you can't have everything be, a thumb in the wind, kind of like, I think it's going to go all right. It doesn't, lend itself to.
Why are we losing this property? No one wants to have that conversation.
All right, cool. And then just entrepreneurship. I mean, I know we talked about the story with, your father-in-law. I got war stories, but like it's been 2010, you said, so almost 15 years.
Right.
What are do you have any sort of like pearls of wisdom that you feel like you mined out along the way there, in terms of like, just simple things that would rattle off if you were at a cocktail party kind of thing, 1, 2, 3 things about entrepreneurship. Like,
ooh, I don't know. I feel it a little too deeply to spit these out at a cocktail party, but I guess I've got we've got an audience here of entrepreneurs that are looking at, I think I said it earlier, kill your ego. Kill your ego. You got to do it for the right reasons. You can, like you said, that person, well, my job sucks and this and that. And, no, you got to want to do it. You got to want to do it. You got to believe in it. And then, start. Start. A guy told me, in fact, it's the same guy that said, when you're going through hell, keep going. He also said, I'd rather play in this game and lose than never have played in it at all. And, one thing that I won't have when it's all said and done is regret. We get down every day. Like, get after it. Go have fun. Make it, make your hair stand on end. Just feel it. Be in there. Dance in the rain. Don't give a shit. Go. And if you believe in it, that's all you've got to fall back on. But start somewhere. I mean, how many times I've told this story, and people are so like, 300 grand. I'm like, well, 300 grand, like that's legal fees on a lot of funds.
Right. Yeah.
Just
a little bit north of there. Yeah.
You got to start somewhere.
Yes.
You got to start, and you got to stop letting the calendar turn pages. If you believe in it, you want it, kill your ego and go get it.
Yeah. And I think maybe a way to frame that, as I was listening and thinking about what you were saying, you're not going to have everything figured out day one. No. You're not going to have everything figured out on day 365 or the year after that, or the year after that, or the year after that. I mean, my entrepreneurial journey is looking back and looking at all the iterations of what we've done and been like, oh, wow, that was the way we did it. Like, I can't believe we did it that way back then. And then you take the next step and you take the next step. And it just, it's sort of an iterative process that until you take that first step, you won't get to step number 2. If you don't take that step to step number 2, step number 3, but like, you gotta just go, right? And there's going to be success and there's going to be challenge along the way, but you gotta just keep going. Yeah. And if you're committed to doing that, you'll see the steps 7, 8, 9, 10, and whatever comes down the road. But it's you just gotta go. You just gotta go. You'll figure it out along the way.
And have the confidence.
Yep.
To figure it out that you'll figure it out along the way, and know that no one asked for help when you need to ask for help.
Yep.
The difference in knowing what you can control and what you can't, and when you need to ask somebody.
Yep.
And know that you're going to get 10 different opinions from 10 different people.
Yep.
But take it all in and process it, and know that you're getting there.
Yep.
You're getting there. Just keep grinding. It's fun, man. But like,
it is.
Yeah.
It is. What do you enjoy most about it? Like just entrepreneurship in general. Like, it's fun, but like, again, same question. You get asked at the cocktail party, like, what are 2 things that you love about it?
I think my job is to get people to see my vision for what that property is.
Yep.
Can be.
Yep.
And because we take on some challenging stuff, and because we see things maybe a little differently through a different lens, a little creative.
Yeah.
When that project comes together,
yep,
and it's occupied, and real estate's a bad news business. Like, you don't get a lot of phone calls that say you're the greatest damn landlord, but there are those that does happen. And when somebody calls and they say, this is a sweet building, this is a sweet product, we focus a lot on user experience, whether that's the retail user or whether that's the residential user or commercial, whomever our tenant is going to be, we focus a lot on that. And when that comes to fruition, when you see that, right, it's not just the sexy schematic that comes out, in rendering. It's when it's real, when it's there, it is just, I get chills just right now thinking about that. That's it. That's it. And then when the days are like a little rough and whatever, I remind myself, you wanted to be this. You asked for this. You wanted to be in this seat and have these, and that's also a really wonderful feeling when you realize, this is the position you wanted. Take it. Go.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know.
I'm just
feeling a little preachy here.
I love it. Preach.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about this, but rewinding the tape a little bit, but thinking about your mom and, the interior design thing. And I have the fortune of working with some interior designers too. And I know the way they think and dream about what places can be.
Right.
Kind of thing. And maybe there's a little bit of that, was passed on to you. And I mean, I feel that too. I mean, in a different way, I'm not developing real estate, but I always try to explain my sick head as, well, if I was in your business, right?
Yeah.
And when I look at a business itself, I think about myself not as the person that, is the builder of that building, but the architect, right? I'm looking through and seeing the existing conditions of the business, and then I'm looking and seeing all the opportunity of like, yes, but if we move this here and we click this thing into place, and that master bedroom doesn't need to be over there; it could be over here. Like, but like that's the way that I think. I think like an architect or an engineer kind of thing about a business, and I love that. Like, and seeing the success that comes from that, or the peace of mind that the business owner is able to get, or the additional profits they generate, or whatever. I mean, it's extremely rewarding. So
I focus so much of my time growing the business. That same guy who was doing the white jeans, he said, you need to raise capital and do deals. That's it. That's it. And he's absolutely right. But getting to the place where I can raise capital and only do deals, because there's accounting, there's HR, there's property, there's all these other pieces that go along with it. So what you do there and finding that structure has got to be incredibly rewarding, because you take all this mess. I mean, I hope it's not a mess. But,
I mean, but that's what it is.
But it is, and then organize it in that engineering mind and framework and put it in a way that's digestible and readable and actionable, and all the things
built to last
that you want to you want to be able to roll out. That's cool. I love it. Similar. It's to find reward in your day to day. It's cool.
I love it. I love what I do for this. It's the same reason people ask me the same question. That's my answer. It's just I love being able to see the fruit of using my experience and skills and all that to see something real happen.
A lot of traders come into my business and they're like, because it's similar in the trading, arbitrage in the value, like in the going in cap and exit cap, and but they want to touch and feel something.
Makes sense.
It's a whole art into itself. That part you got to touch and feel is a renovation project in front of you, or a build that you got to figure out. But it's good.
Awesome. All right. Well, you have been an incredible guest, as I highly anticipated. I think people are going to glean a lot, but you're not off the hook yet. We got our final 3 questions.
Okay.
And these are just for fun. Adapt as you would like to. But it's just kind of like a get to know you kind of thing. But number 1 is top 3 rock and roll bands of all time. And I know we have some shared affinity for at least one, I think. But I'm curious.
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
1, 2. Number 1, anybody, is the Rolling Stones.
Bam. That's right.
There's no question about it. Number 2 is Zeppelin. For me. I think the way they change music and the sound, just the overall sound, the variation of their music is unbelievable. And then the third one, not really a band, not sure like it's even rock and roll. That's cool. In the last 10 years, I've gotten really deep into the singer-songwriter. It started with Sturgill Simpson for me. His lyrics resonate with me. And then, John Prine and Stephen Wilson Jr., Tyler Childers, that genre for me. Like I know you asked for, a third, but I'm going to, I'm sure I'll get some pushback about putting John Prine with those other guys, because Prine's legendary, but those guys brought me to listen to John Prine, and
Chicago's own John Prine.
I can listen. I can laugh and I can cry with John Prine. And that's a wild feeling. So those are my guys.
I actually, so my story about being introduced to John Prine was during COVID. I don't know why I'm telling the story, but I'm going to do it anyway. During COVID, there was a video that came out of Kevin Bacon and his wife singing a John Prine song. And I was like, I've never heard that song before, but it's In Spite of Ourselves. And I was like, how have I never heard that song? And then I went down this rabbit hole of John Prine, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, how did I not know this guy existed? But
one of my best friend's wedding songs, by the way. Can you imagine that being at a wedding?
That's a good one.
That's lighthearted.
Yes, very much so. I love it. Annual holiday, that's the best one? Your favorite?
Oh,
Opinions are very just wide on this one, by the way. I get a lot of unique answers. So
yeah, well, the kids get most excited about Christmas.
Yep.
But for me, it's and that means a lot to me. But I say Thanksgiving.
Yep.
I love just sitting down and eating and being thankful.
Yep.
It's something I learned later in life, but
Yep.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
If you weren't currently doing what you're doing for work, any unrelated career that you can see yourself enjoying and thriving in, sort of an alternate,
I bet you'd guess this one too.
Well,
I bet you'd guess this.
I'm sure there's a lot of it.
My dad, I was going to really kind of pushing to pursue this. And my dad had been in this business.
Yep.
And he said, you can't do that. Like it's, you're working when everybody else is playing.
Yep.
And that's hospitality.
Yep.
The restaurant business,
Yep.
the bar business, like something like that. I always thought I would have been really good at that.
Yep.
And my dad gave me good advice because, I don't need to be working. I don't need to be playing when everybody else is playing or working when everybody else is playing because I find a way to, play.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I do that. What drives me to that is like the desire to take care of people, like, and treat people.
Yeah.
Like, so I do that now in my kitchen. And I like, if I can make something that people like, I get a kick out of that.
Yep.
So I think that's probably where my head, my heart would probably have taken me.
Yep.
But I've got a nice blend of it now. I can find a great restaurateur to put in the building and, have a little bit of a relationship there. So,
yeah. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. I definitely could see in hospitality in any number of capacities, but yeah, you're just always been, someone who people gather around. Right? I mean, a good person to chat with and make you feel warm and welcome. So, and you have absolutely done that here today. So I appreciate it. Appreciate you, buddy. Wishing you continued success. And thanks for being here to do this today. I think people are going to really enjoy it.
It was a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Happy for you and thrilled to get an invite to do this. And I've totally enjoyed it. So thanks very much. And thanks for making me feel comfortable here.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Love it, buddy. Thanks.
Anytime.